Thank you for listening to Dream 10X Radio, where we interview people attempting to live extraordinary lives. Our twofold purpose is to both direct and inspire people bold enough to do the same. Dream 10X. Face your fears and make your life count. Hi, and welcome to episode 10 of the Dream 10X podcast. In this episode, we're talking to a woman who participated in the Amazon Prime series Echo Challenge Fiji Adventure Race as a member of Team Out There, who finished in 17th place overall out of 66 teams in just 196 hours and 54 minutes. She was also a professional mountain biker from 1995 to 2006 who consistently ranked in the top 7 nationally with several podium finishes. She won the Transalp Stage race twice, the Mountain Bike Marathon U.S. National Championships twice, and competed for the U.S. national team at the World Championships several times. She is a certified public accountant and she lives in Vail, Colorado. Please welcome Gretchen Reeves. Tell us about how you got into mountain biking and what drove you to do that.
Yeah, so when I was in school at University of Georgia, we all had mountain bikes that we rode to school and, just around town and whatnot. And, there are a few trails around Athens and we go mess around on those. And one weekend, a friend of mine was like, hey, they're having this mountain bike festival in Ellijay, which is in like the Blue Ridge Mountains in North Georgia. And I was like, yeah, let's go. So we had, a group, we went up there and we were wearing like cutoffs and, Tevas and goofy helmets and, nobody had suspension. Like it was just all hardtails and rigid forks. And we were riding these like super technical trails, at least they seemed so at the time. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the most thing I've ever done in my life. And I was just got way into it. And I got, a suspension fork shortly thereafter and the clipless pedals. And then I don't know, a year later, I had gone on a trip to Colorado and they're having world championships in Durango. And I was like, what is this? Like, I want to do this. And yeah, so like all the top, mountain bikers in the world were there. And yeah, it just kind of fell into my lap, to be honest. I worked at a bike shop in Atlanta for a short time and met another pro. And he was like, you need to do the Norba series. And I said, what's the Norba series? And it was the national series at that time that would, so we'd go all over the country and race. And picked up a sponsor and I just started racing and I just loved it. And that's it. I wanted to do it. And so I moved to Colorado in 95 and because a lot of the races at the time were at ski areas because they had the infrastructure to have downhill races and cross country and all the other events that they have there. And so I came to Vail to altitude train and I ended up staying because the people here are awesome and it's just awesome, great place. So it's been kind of, it's definitely transitioned from mostly being a professional athlete to mostly being a CPA accountant now, but it's more fun to talk about the athletic stuff, right? So
yeah. Was that one sponsor you had enough to survive on and train on?
So my first sponsor was basically they paid my expenses and my equipment and things like that, and so it wasn't enough. Like I had a part-time job, pretty much the whole time. Most of the time that I was racing, I had a part-time job because for one thing, it's not, even if you're at the top level, you're not making a huge income, but you are making enough to like train and not work a lot, which is like a dream, it's like a dream, right? It was, I didn't care that I wasn't making a lot of money. And so but it works out really. I think it's actually good to have like something else going on besides just racing, because when you're just racing, all of your like self-worth is tied into that, is tied into your racing and your results. And at least it was for me. And so if I had a bad race, I was I get kind of down. And then if I had a great race, I'd be, top of the world. And so it's good to have that other thing going on, so that you have something else to focus on besides just racing. So that's, at least that's how it was for me. And I was also learning, a skill while I was mountain bike racing. So I had something, set up, when I was basically done with that part of my life.
That's an interesting perspective, because a lot of athletes who are trying to do something big in athletics, whether it's Olympics or mountain biking or triathlon or whatever, paying for that your lifestyle is an important consideration, and how to balance the work that you need to do to get an income, and then also carve out a large part of your day to do your training.
I mean, I agree with that, and I think it takes some time to figure out that balance,
Hmm.
because, when you, especially if you're a triathlete, like an Ironman triathlete, you have to put in a lot of time. And I think that would be really tough. But with mountain biking, I found that when I wasn't working, I would overtrain, because, it was like, well, I feel like I need to be doing something. I need to be working at my job. And so I would just train too much. And, it ended up working out well in the long run, in, later years. But I actually just, that work was something that helped me, you know, not overtrain, because I had to be specific with training and not just go out and ride for 5 hours and put in junk miles, is what we call it. So,
Huh. How do you
um,
know if you're overtraining?
well, there are a lot of signs, that you are basically, if you are going into a race and you're tired for every race, if you don't have the ability to hit your intensity um, goals, like if you can't get your heart rate up to your zone 5, or some people experience have different symptoms, like have a time getting out of bed, they have a hard time sleeping, just all kinds of ways that you can all kinds of symptoms you can have from overtraining. But for me, it was like I was doing all this training, and then I would go to a race and just, some of the races just didn't go like I was expecting them to, based on my training. So it really helped me to work with a coach, at least for some periods in my career, because they said, hey, they're looking at it from a different perspective, and like, hey, you're doing way too much volume. You need to do shorter, harder workouts, and make sure you're resting. And resting is so hard for athletes.
Hmm.
It's just like you have to have. It takes courage to take it easy,
Yeah.
and so but you got to do it. You got
Yeah.
to recover.
How important to you has interval training, high intensity interval training been?
Well, it's crucial in depending on what kind of race you're doing, and even for long distance races, which for me might be like a 5 to 7 hour mountain bike race. I still want to do intervals for that, because you have there may be parts of the course where you want to pass someone, or you want to be able to sustain a certain intensity for like a long climb. So no matter, I think, what length the race is, I think intervals are very important.
And what altitude are you at there? You're in the Vale area?
hmm Yeah, just down valley a bit from the like the actual town of Vale, but we're at about 7,500 feet here.
Okay, wow. So that's a good a good height to be training at as well.
That's a good height for Patagonia for sure. But what the interesting thing is that when we go to low altitude, those races would actually be could actually be pretty difficult, because you feel good, like maybe you feel good when you first get down. You know, climbing is if it's a long climbing, you know, kind of race, it would be, you know, very good for us. But like like a race, say, where it's a flatter course and you're doing like these little short climbs, like up and down and kind of punchy climbs, it would be so hard because our muscles, like you don't have enough oxygen for you here to put in the intensity that you can at low altitude, if that makes sense. Because at low altitude you can go super hard and recover, and here you just don't have that much oxygen, so you know you can't recover and you can't put in those efforts. So there's definitely, you know, there's a big advantage, but there are also some disadvantages to it.
What are the distances involved in the mountain bike races that you typically go to?
So the last few years I've mostly been doing endurance marathon races, and so the distances would be somewhere between 50 to 100 miles.
Hmm.
And honestly, you see quite a few of the we'll say more mature athletes going to these races after they've done cross country for several years, because it's kind of hard. It's hard to retire. It's hard to just stop. And so, but you have all these years of training and you can ride for a long time
Yeah.
at a good pace, but the intensity is, I have little desire to do short races anymore, or basically no desire.
Yeah, I feel the same way about rowing. I still want to do the movement, but I'm the same way. I don't want to do the fast sprints anymore. Just
Yeah,
like the long, slow stuff.
exactly. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
So
keeps you moving. Are you also running?
I do run, and I do some running races just to stay in shape, and you know, for like the trekking sections of, say, an adventure race, or just because I like it. I love trail running. I don't like running on the road at all, but yeah, we have just tons of trails here, and I'll go out and do like a big loop, and it's really cool and fun. But I am not running fast. I am definitely running like at an AR pace, which is slow and with a pack on and all that stuff. So
Oh, that's good to hear.
yeah.
Adventure race
Okay.
pace.
So an AR pace is an adventure race pace.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
good. That's our pace.
That means our adventure race pace is going to be really slow.
Well, you know, it's a lot of it's definitely, it doesn't do you any much good to in certain times. I think that you want to maybe get out in front, like at the beginning of a race, or get out of like a pack, you know, for whatever reason. But especially at an expedition race, it's, you got to be steady and you can't blow yourself up, that's for sure.
Hmm.
So
I worked with in my previous job, worked with a woman who was also, I don't know if she was considered professional, but she was a really good mountain biker. And I knew nothing about that sport. Like, what is that like? What are the distances involved? Like in rowing, you typically have a 2,000-meter sprint, and then you have a 6,000-meter long distance race in the fall. What are kind of the analogs in the mountain biking world?
yeah, that's a great question. So for, and they've kind of changed a little bit since I was doing like the national circuit. But now, so that they have what is called XCO, which is like an Olympic distance, and those courses are usually about an hour and a half. They don't really go by distance; they go by time.
Hmm.
So so for the women's race, like the winner would be coming in at about an hour and a half, and the men would be somewhere like 1:45, something like that. Um, and then they have a short track, which is a 20-minute race, and basically like a, almost like a criterium, but on mountain bikes. And then you get into the marathon races, which could be that's there's not really a set distance for that either, but I'd say like normally the like the national marathon to be somewhere between like 4 to 5 hours of racing. And then you just run the gamut of, like, there's so many stage races out there now where you know 5 to 7 days of racing, long days, short days. There's just so many options now for getting out there on your mountain bike. So
Is there a governing body that kind of oversees all the standards for the races?
yeah, so there's USA Cycling, and then there's UCI, which is the International Mountain Bike Governing Body. It's been around for a long time, USA Cycling, and then they determine like who goes to Worlds, who goes to the Olympics, and they still do drug testing. So they would come to my house and randomly, and I'd have to pee in a cup in front of some.
Okay.
I'm serious. And yeah, they should knock on your door and, oh great, USADA's here, and then you'd have to pee in a cup, and but it's kind of nerve-wracking because they're literally like watching you pee so that you don't slip anything weird into the cup. And so yeah, it's legit, put it that way.
Well, how do they? So I guess in mountain biking, you've got different. So you said some of the tracks were like technical. Like what governs what a technical path is? Like, how do you compare apples to apples between all the races in terms of speed and stuff?
I think what like now what they're doing is they're doing shorter courses. So maybe it's going to be like a 5 kilometer course that you do laps on, and a big reason for that is so that it makes it more spectator friendly. So Red Bull TV covers it, and it's so fun to watch. Like the women's races are just, I love watching their World Cup races. So they actually have like built-in obstacles now, which when I was racing, that wasn't really happening because we were just riding like old hiking trails that became mountain bike trails, and those are can be very technical courses. But then they also design these other courses to have just like jumps and drops and things like that. So it is fun, it's spectator friendly, like I said, and then I think they just determine the number of laps by like what they believe that lap times will be, and so that's how that works.
Okay.
Interesting.
What kind of bike do you have?
Which one?
Okay,
I have.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Oh boy, I
Pam
don't
Butler, who's
even.
an Olympic outrigger, canoer, paddler, and she's got tons of different types of boats that she likes to so people who love their sport generally have lots of tools, I guess. How many bikes?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the bikes that I ride often, I have a one road bike, and then I have like a trail bike, which is for more like enduro. I mean, not really enduro riding, but if I'm riding something like big mountain, more technical, or Moab kind of riding. And then I have my cross country race bike, and they're all Scots, by the way. They're awesome. And then I have a fat bike, a snow bike, which I don't ride very much because I'd rather go ski than ride my.
Heck yeah.
I don't need to ride my bike in the winter. I'd rather go skiing. And then my townie that I ride around town. So I guess that's 5.
Wow. Do you have a car?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got a truck.
Oh.
Yeah.
I just wondered if you were
got a truck. And then we have a ton of boats as well and all that stuff. But I guess we're still talking about biking. So,
what kind of boats do you have?
My boyfriend, he was on the U.S. raft team for several years, and I don't know if you heard about this, but they did a speed run on the Grand Canyon, and they've actually attempted it twice now, and so they built this huge a huge raft. And they rode it instead of paddling it like you normally would a raft. And they actually did a film on it, and it's somewhere on the internet on YouTube. And yeah, it's pretty cool. So he paddles a lot. So we have sea kayaks, whitewater kayaks, paddle boards. I don't even dory.
You got a dory?
Jerk boat raft. But yeah, Kurt built the dory. Yeah.
No kidding. What kind of dory is it?
A handmade. I mean, he is it's a wooden dory, and it's it is really fun to take on the river.
Yeah, because they're flat
It's
bottom
smooth.
boats, so they're good for that. I used to have a gunning dory, and I love that boat.
Yeah, that's really cool. Um,
And the fact
so
that he
it,
made it himself, that's really interesting. That's one of my small dreams is to make my own boat one day.
yeah, well, I got someone you can talk to if you have any questions.
That's cool. So you're just an overall, all around outdoor. You love the outdoors. I love that.
I do. It's a little bit too much. I mean, I might love it a little bit too much. It interferes with serious life sometimes, I guess, but that's okay.
Serious life, what's that? You mean like professional?
Oh, work, yeah,
Yeah.
work and mostly work, I guess.
So since we're on the topic, what do you do for a living?
I'm a CPA, and we work with mostly small business clients. We work with a lot of athletes, and we know that, and I say we, the guy that works with me is also a professional mountain bike racer. And so we just have a great system for our athlete clients, and it's nice to be able to help, some of the new, younger athletes getting into it. Like we can, help them get started, and then when they get to, the big time, we help them set up their businesses or corporation or whatever, however you decide to do that. And then we work with other businesses besides athletes. It's a great, balance. And the last 2 years have been pretty tough, just with what's happened in the tax world and the COVID, obviously. But I am so lucky. I like all of my clients. It's an amazing place to be, where you nobody gets on your nerves. It's just cool. So I'm lucky for that. And but it took some time. It took some time to get there. I'm living the life I chose to live, and that's pretty darn lucky, I guess.
That is very
And
lucky. And that's one of the reasons I
so
want to talk to you.
Hmm.
How can we learn from you to live the life we want to live?
well, you just kind of have to make it happen. I mean, and I talk about this with my friends, because we say, oh, sometimes I feel almost guilty because I every day, even like a kind of a crappy day here, is still really good.
Hmm.
you know I mean, and what I mean by that is, like, okay, so maybe the weather's really bad, or you try to, when I'm on a deadline at work, it's really a challenging time. But there's there's a trail that's like, 5 minutes from my office, and I'll just go cruise up that trail, and it just totally clears my head. I feel good. I come back to work and I'm refreshed and got some good views while I was at it. Like, that's just a day in life. And it's just it's a great situation to be in. But I made this happen myself. Like, I had no money when I came to Vail,
Hmm.
and I didn't have any debt either, which was it's a huge
Right.
that's a huge plus. But I lived on a shoestring budget for a few years, and but I wanted it to work, so I made it work.
Well, what's your debt situation now?
My home mortgage, and
Yeah.
that's it. What is it? Equity ratio is pretty good.
Yeah.
So um, one thing about racing too, like mountain bike racing, it teaches you to be very frugal.
Hmm.
Um, you have to live within your means, or you're not going to be able to, do what you want to do, and also, race, and also, you know, make make ends meet, I guess, and be comfortable with that. My debt tolerance is low, so I worked hard to not have much of that.
Oh, that's very interesting. So, do you still feel as free now as you did when you first moved out there? Now that
Oh,
you're
heck no.
more successful?
I don't. Work is definitely taken. It's taken a much bigger role in life, and the periods around the deadline, and pretty much January through April is I'm jamming at work. I do backcountry ski a lot, and so I'll do that on the weekends and do shorter ski tours during the week. But it's a lot of work, and it's very stressful. There are very stressful times, and it's just I have to remember that what comes after the deadlines to kind of get by on those, for sure.
So, why did you start your own CPA firm at GretchenReevesCPA.com?
I did that so that I could have my own schedule, and I figured have summers off for the rest of my life, but it didn't turn out that way. um, but in the beginning, it was, it was a good balance because I was still racing and I had that income. And then, I started with just a few clients, and then of course it builds up every year after that. And you know, it's at some point it shifted to being like, oh, now you're mostly an accountant.
So it's just interesting to me, how people try to, when we're younger, we're, chasing a dream, and then at some point, whether it's the mortgage or whatever, that, the priorities shift to paying for our lives and trying to make more and more money to kind of pay for our lives, and we kind of lose the freedom, I think, sometimes as an adult.
I've definitely had conversations with my partner about, he's also self-employed. He has a landscaping business, and so our busy seasons are kind of opposite of each other. And we've had conversations about like, how can we, at what point do we say, okay, like we need to scale back on this so we can do more of this. And for me, it was like, well, I'm going to wait. I'm going to get to the point where I just can't handle it. And that's when I know I need to cut back. And I am at that point now. So, and so it's, how do you do that? And that's sort of what I'm working on right now is, ways to make, the busy seasons more manageable. And so it's not just taking over my life for 2 or 3 months of the year.
How did you transition then from your professional mountain biking career into a more long distance adventure racing kind of thing?
So that was that happened around I guess 2006. I'd been racing for about 10 to 12 years, I guess, just mountain biking, and then around that time period, there's kind of a slump in like mountain bike sponsorship. And what happened was the Norva series used to be is televised. So when it's televised, it's going to bring on a lot more monetary sponsors than when it's not, right? So when that got pulled, it really hurt the sponsorship dollars for mountain bike racing. And so I was like, okay, I can see the writing on the wall here. I'm gonna keep doing this for as long as I can, but I'm gonna start my business and just kind of just roll with it, see what happens. And so I sort of retired from, I guess I tried to retire from cross country racing, and then I got invited to do an adventure race, and I just loved it. I was like, I get to do everything now. Like I get to paddle, I get to run, I get to get on the ropes and be scared, and I was so excited to learn these new sports. And it was, and I was on a team with 3 guys, and I just loved it. I'm a tomboy, so I was like, this is like the best thing ever, and and so I just fell in love with that. And because I had some of those skills, and I was already fit from bike racing, and the girl was kind of hard to come by. I got a lot of invites once I started doing that. And so that was really cool. And then in Vail, there happens to be, some of the top racers in the world. So I got on a really good team pretty early. So that was just pure luck, So I couldn't say no because I wanted to travel and race, and some of the races had really good prize money. And so yeah, we started doing that, and it was just so fun. And continued to bike race while, to stay shape and all that stuff. So
So Gretchen, I think it's interesting that you mentioned that a lot of women don't do these kinds of things. So people that I interviewed and talked to for my dissertation and other areas talk about the same thing. So there were a couple of ocean rowers and river rowers who couldn't get women to take the time off or to train or to come participate in these sports. So there seems to be some sort of barrier. And why do you think that is? And have you experienced that in mountain biking as well?
I think, and things have evolved a lot since I first started, but I think part of it is just, and I'm going to use adventure racing as the example here, but I think there's some intimidation factor as, for women racing with men, because if you are, especially if you're doing like a shorter race where the pace is a lot higher, if you're racing with guys at your level, they're going to be faster than you, right?
Mm.
So that can be intimidating. And if you're, I don't know, maybe if you're not used to being around guys so much, you don't necessarily like that part either, I guess. But
Wait,
but
wanna...
they might be concerned. I don't know. There could be some concern about, okay, what happens if I have to pee or whatever, and that just goes out the window after like the first 5 hours. You just get naked in front of people, and it's whatever. But the thing is that it's a little bit too bad, because it is a team effort, and that's just the what I love about adventure racing so much. And I think it's just a matter of like getting more, if more women want to be involved. There's like there's like women only races that Nathan Fave puts them on, and down in New Zealand. So he's the guy that won Eco Challenge this last time. And he had, I think, over 2,000 women at one of his races. And so that's a way for women to get involved in the sport and at that level. And then, maybe then they can sort of get involved at a higher level if they choose to. And Nathan and I spoke to him when we were down there, and he was telling us about it. He said it was so awesome, because it was really getting more women into the sport, and then just sort of helping the teams out that actually needed female racers as well. So
yeah, that's
pretty cool.
Like creating a safe space for them to learn and figure out their own barriers and boundaries, and then really encouraging them to move forward. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love it. And to be frank, like New Zealand actually is like the best terrain for adventure racing, because it's an island, right? And so they have mountains, they have paddling galore, they've got everything there in kind of a smaller, like condensed area. So they probably have a higher number of adventure athletes per capita than anywhere else in the world, I would think. So they're all good. They're all good. They're so tough.
So interesting. Is the format for adventure racing is the rule to have one woman on the team, at least one woman, for all adventure races, or is it just some of them, or what's the deal there?
For most adventure races, any that I've ever done, there has to be at least one member of the opposite sex on the team. So, and I actually did one race in France where they had like a mixed team, and then male teams and female teams. And so that's the only one I've done where they had like, they had it split out like that. So you could just choose which ones you wanted to do, I guess. So
why is that? What do you think the reason is behind that?
I have gotten that question, and I've thought about it a lot. I don't know exactly the reason, but I almost think it's one way to keep the teams more balanced, in terms of like how in terms of like pace, I guess. So like, for example, if they allowed like male teams to be like all male teams, all female and mixed in a race like Eco, like the all male teams would just be way so far ahead of like the mixed teams, and possibly not necessarily for Eco Challenge, but like in some of these other races we did, the male teams would destroy, the other teams. So I think that's one reason, but I also feel like it's kind of a safety factor. So for example, like when we did like avalanche training, the statistics of getting into an avalanche and into a fatal avalanche is less when you have a woman in the group. And that's because, and I'm like, that's right, women are smarter, we know this. But I think that there's, I don't know the actual reason for that, but I think that, in general, like men are going to they're going to want to protect females. That's sort of in their nature. But I also think that women are just, they have their sense of self, our sense of self-preservation is higher than that of males, generally speaking. And do you agree with that? I mean, does that?
I would agree with that. Just judging
Well,
by male friends and colleagues.
yeah, I mean, we're just more calculated with our decisions. Like that's how
Thank you for not saying it.
females are that's a part of our chemistry, right? And so I think that would be my guess as to why, but I actually haven't. I could probably research it and find out, but I don't know the answer to that, the exact answer to that. But that's my guess.
I mean, I do find the 4-person teams really intriguing about adventure racing because so many things have to go right in order to get 4 people on the same team across the finish line over that distance. And even when you think about an individual doing an Ironman, so many things have to go right just for that individual to get to the starting line and to finish that race. And so when you add 4 people to something that's 6 times as long as an Ironman, like there's so many parts to that calculus of even completing that race. It's really mind-boggling. And then to add, the female facet into that, I'm not saying, I think it's a really intriguing thing to me. I think it's interesting. But
Yeah.
going back to how you got into that first adventure race, who was it that invited you, and have you stuck with that team the entire? Is it the team captain for Team Out There? Was that your first one, or was it a different team?
No, it was well, actually my very first one was here in Vail, because they have the GoPro games here every year, and it's a pretty big event. And I actually got invited to race with a couple of guys from here. One of them's one of my best friends. He's a fellow mountain bike racer, and then the other guy had been adventure racing so at that time it was the Nike team, and so they were one of the biggest teams in the world at that time.
Wow.
And so I was like, sure, yeah, I'll do that. I have a free weekend, and so it was just it was like a 6-hour race, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome, this is so fun. And we got second, won some prize money, and that's always like pretty cool, right? And so that was my first like little one that I did. And then I started talking to friends, adventure racer friends, and I was like, hey, if anybody needs a girl, and just kind of started getting invites from there. I raced with a team that 3 guys that I didn't know at all, and that was really fun. We had a great time. I raced with 2 guys that told me that that they were experienced paddlers, and I was like, I don't paddle at all, so I need to be in the boat with somebody that knows how to paddle. And they're like, oh yeah, no, we can paddle, yeah, we're good. So we get into like class 3 water, and in the springtime, it's just it's jamming, the water's just flowing, and so the 3 of us get into this one ducky, and they're about the same. They're not much bigger than I am. They're runners, and
Wait, what does that mean? What's a ducky? What's a runner?
Okay. A ducky. So a ducky is like a blow up raft that looks like a canoe kind of.
Okay.
And they're used a lot in adventure races because they're safer than like getting into a hard plastic kayak, plastic boat. They're more stable. So I get in with these 2 guys, and the waters, and I mean, there were several rescues on the river that day, and just with somebody got caught in a strainer, and there's people out of the boats everywhere. And so I'm sitting in the middle, both these guys fall out of the boat, and I'm like, I don't know what to do here. And there's a safety kayaker, and he says, you need to get into an eddy now. And I was like, what's an eddy? And
who's Eddie?
I know. I was like, I was really probably one of the scariest times in my life, because you can easily die in the rivers here in Colorado. They're super cold, and just a lot of entrapment, places where you can get trapped and sucked under the water. And so I got the boat over, and one dude was like way down the river, and the other guy got out of the river, and I was like, we are walking this boat the rest of the way, because I am not getting back in this boat with you guys. And So the moral of that story is it's good to know who you're racing with and making sure that they have experience, and it's also good to have some experience, at least a remedial knowledge of like, what you're going to be doing in the race. And so that was a lesson learned there for sure. Like I learned how to kayak. I started learning how to kayak the next week. I was like, I'm not doing that again. So
Yeah. So do you know how to do Eskimo rolls and all that?
oh man. I practice rolls, and like, right. I mean, I'd probably, if I tried to roll right now, I don't think it just gets in your head, and it's so hard to, yeah. I was about 50-50 at my best, I think.
So 2006-ish is when you started getting into adventure racing. How many did you do between then and when you hooked up with Team Out There?
Well, so I don't know how many, gosh, there's quite a few. And we did a lot of races in China because they basically paid our way there. And
Who's they?
there's a lot of Chinese government. They
No
were
kidding.
printing, yeah. Yeah, they were printing, apparently they were printing dollar bills over there too.
For adventuring.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, like, it was they would pay us in Benjis, US dollars. And
No kidding.
so we would, yeah. And so the Nike team, so that was so Nike is Mike Closer. And do you know who Mike Closer is? You heard of him?
He's the team captain for Team Out There, right?
Yes. And he's probably maybe other than Nathan Fave, he has the most he's the most decorated adventure athlete in the world.
Okay, wow.
He's extremely good. And so he lives in Vail, and so there were two Nike teams. So I was racing with the little like stepbrother team of the big Nike team, which was Mike Closer's team.
Okay.
And eventually, like, we combined forces, and Mike, we were racing with Mike's team, and so we were going to China, and that, like, once or twice a year to race. And so those were big races because we trained really hard for those because of the prize money, and just that we didn't have any travel expenses either. And then I did some just like regional races with, guys for training. So like Travis Macy, the guy on Team Endure, the Macy's.
Yep.
I raced with him.
Wow.
And so yeah, it was just a kind of a mix of doing like regional stuff, like I said, for training, and then doing the bigger races that had like prize money. Like we went to Mexico a few times. We went to Europe, and then that was, they're pretty expensive to get to, actually. So we didn't travel a ton for like big races unless they were paying for expenses. So or unless somebody was. So that was kind of how that went. But I hadn't done a full-blown expedition race until Eco Challenge. So
what is a full
that was a new. So full-blown, so a long adventure race would be like Eco Challenge, like 4 to 7 days. A shorter one would be like 2 to 3 days. And then we did mostly stage races where we were racing every day, but we were also, we're sleeping in a hotel at night or something, So there's a big difference. There's a big difference, but the paces are also much higher. Like it was very intense. And so like, for example, when we go to Mexico or China and we were doing these stage races, like I would be so for running, I was almost always on a tow line. Do you know what that means?
I guess they tie a string around you and pull you along or something.
Okay, not like the guy in the underwear. It wasn't like that, but not exactly like that. But yeah, we have systems for towing on the bike as well as towing on like running. And so it was usually me being towed. And so yeah, I would just have a carabiner with like a bungee cord kind of thing, like a dog leash kind of thing. I put that on my pack and then, run with whoever was towing me at the time. And it's extremely effective. And it's uncomfortable for me because I'm having to adjust like strides and my pace and stuff like that, but it's super effective. And then biking, it's easy because you're on wheels. So, but it's great. It keeps you all together. So it's a really good system.
What's the prize money for those China races?
Oh gosh. So they had like stage money and top three. We would come home with like I don't know, we 25 to 35 grand.
Oh, really? Wow.
And yeah, like I said, they would pay it all in like Benjis. So we felt like drug lords. We have all the money on the bed. We counted out. Huh?
You'd be bringing a backpack full of cash home?
Yes. I'm like, yeah. And
That's
I
great.
was like, well, what if we have more than $10,000? And I'm like, well, it's no big deal. Like just hold on to your backpack. Make sure you keep that thing tight.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was pretty funny. And we were gone for like a week, but I mean, for us, like we were just at the time, like that was a great paycheck for the week,
Sure.
and loved training for it. So the training didn't even seem like work. It was just fun.
How do you prepare for something like this?
What I do is basically the first step is like knowing what all is going to be in the race and how much, if like about how much you think is going to be for each event. So for Fiji, for example, we did a lot of paddling and we knew that it was going to be like outrigger paddling. So we were paddling canoes, and I actually had an outrigger to paddle as well. But we practiced that, and we wanted to make sure that we had if you have the technique down and you're fit, I think that really helps a lot. So you have to work with somebody that knows that knows the technique. And then basically like biking, like I know I can bike, but no matter what, I'm going to be able to bike. I'm going to be able to bike pretty well. And then personally, I spent a lot of time on my feet before Fiji because I knew that was going to be a lot of trekking, and you just want to have your body used to like that impact and walking with a pack, and then like knowing what's going to happen with your feet. And so I would run through all the creeks. I would make sure, run with my feet wet, and I just try to like plan for some of the elements that that we were going to have in Fiji. And I think that was really, and as far as like fitness goes, and as far as just the physical part of it, like we were all like really good with that part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was good to know, because I was actually quite worried about the paddling, because we were not the best paddling team, but I think because of our fitness, we had an awesome paddle. Like we were on the first day of the race. So
Yeah, then Fave's team flipped over, didn't they, at the beginning?
yeah, they flipped over. They were right next to us when they flipped over, and it was it like they're gonna pull back up pretty quick no matter what. So they flipped over, got back in, and it was just so chaotic at the start because they had us in this like really narrow channel by design, I'm sure. So we have these awkward boats that nobody knows, no one's paddled before, and with these big amas, and we're trying to get out of this canal without hitting each other, and yeah, they flipped over. So I didn't feel too bad for them. After I was like, oh, that sucks, and because you don't want
Go.
I don't want it to happen to anybody, really. You don't want anyone to have like bad luck like that. But then here they come, like halfway through the first stage, they're hey guys, hey mates,
So, how heavy is your pack that you train with?
I don't know. I actually never weighed it, but I tried to like when I raced Fiji, I carried the least amount of weight. Like the guys carried most of the mandatory gear, and I had a pretty light pack. I don't know what it was, like maybe 15 pounds or something. I have no idea, but it was definitely didn't seem too cumbersome.
And what was the longest trekking training trek? The longest training trek you did with pack and getting your feet wet and all that for training?
I did, just on my own, I would do like, somewhere between, like, alternate between like 12 miles and 20 miles, somewhere in that range. And then I did with my teammates, Mike and Josiah, we did a trek from Vail to Aspen. And so that was like a 3-day thing where we had quite heavy packs. Like we had all of our camping gear and stuff in there. So, we weren't running per se, but we did a little bit of, like the downhills, we kind of jogged those, and then, just hike the uphills. But yeah, that was a good training for sure.
Wow. Was that straight through, or did you camp at night?
Yeah, we camped. I mean, we do it right. We had, like, wine and margaritas were also there. I mean, we weren't like being super, anal or anything, but it's got to be fun, right?
Applying for the Fiji race, what was that like, that whole application process for you guys?
Well, Mike Closer had applied early before I even knew that it was happening. And originally he had applied with he basically put a team together that was all past like eco winners. And because Mike's won it 3 times in the past.
Oh, wow.
So he put a team together that had everyone on the team had won it before, but then it ended up it just didn't work out with those guys. So he still had the application was under his name, was his team. So he asked, so I knew it was happening, and I was just like, oh, some folks are saying, oh, I bet you're going to get an invite for Fiji. I'm like, there's no way I can do Fiji. Like, I was just like, there's no way, the timing is bad. And I'm too busy at work to train that much. And then it was like right after tax season in April, he called me and asked me to do Fiji. And I was just like, I was about to say, it's like on the phone with him. And I was like, I'm super honored that you asked me, but I just don't think, and blah, blah. And then it's just, we were going on our spring vacation, and we went into a canyon. And so the call dropped.
No kidding.
And so Kurt, my boyfriend, says, was that for Eco Challenge? I was like, yeah. I was like, I just don't think I can pull it off. And he was like, you got to do it. And I was like, oh, okay, well, you're on board. Okay. For me to go. And I was like, and then I was just like, started to think about it. And it's just a thing I've always wanted to do that I haven't gotten to do yet. And so we got out of the canyon, and I waited like half an hour just to be cool. And then I called him back, and I was like, hey, I'm in, And so,
wow.
So basically he had the application, but then he got the teammates in place afterwards. And so Josiah is also in Vail, and he's like in Josiah Middaw, Xterra world champion past, and multiple national champion at Xterra. So he's a beast. He's so good.
And then Gordon Townsend?
Yeah, so Gordon Townsend, we had never met him, and Mike, weren't even really familiar with him, but he was a recommendation from our TAC, who had actually won the last Eco Challenge in Fiji. His name is Neil Jones, and he's a Kiwi also. And so he was like, hey, you should bring this guy, Flash is what we called him. And he's got he was in special forces in New Zealand, and just good at great survival skills, and just a strong dude. And so, yeah, he was our 4th, and also the navigator, like the head navigator. So, so that, and so, yeah, the only, thing was that we didn't know him before we got there. So, but that happens in an adventure races oftentimes, because you lose a teammate and you're like scrambling to find someone. But yeah, so we got him. So
Okay, so you didn't have to go through the process of making a video and doing the application and then waiting and biting your nails for 2 months to see if you got in. You were just in automatically.
well,
That might be a
personally,
better
I
way to do
didn't, because I didn't personally have to go through that, but yeah. So this time, yeah, I was like, we have to do a video, what? And I wished I would have like gone online and like just Googled, how to do a professional Zoom meeting
it.
before I did the video. I did not do that, and so I would recommend that to anyone that's has to do that at some point. I was awful fidgety and looking around a lot, but anyway.
Okay, I feel better
Yeah, so we figure that if we do get in, it'll be more based um, on us having already been there, or
now.
Mike having so much experience, than it is going to be on our Zoom video, I hope. That's at least what we're hoping for. So
I'm sure that's the case. Yeah, and the more I learn about this, the more I realize, oh, well, I'm just way out. This is totally out of my element. I'm not even. We're nowhere near
We know what
material for
Compass
this.
is.
well, I think the thing is, I think you can get overwhelmed looking at the full span of the course, and what all, like how long it is, and um, all the different disciplines. But I think if you don't look at it as necessarily like as a whole, and you think, okay, like how do we break this down? Like, we know we need to do, we're going to have trekking, we know we're going to have
Yeah.
some mountaineering, and you break that down. I mean, you're not going to go out. I mean, it would be silly to just go out and do, that's silly, but to just try to go out and do a whole week's worth of mixing it up like that, to in times 10 to get ready for a race. Like, you have to break it down just like you would like for me, if I'm doing a marathon race, okay, I'm not going to go out and ride 5 hours every time I go train. It's going to be little bits here and then longer bits here. And I think that's a better way to think about preparing for
That's good advice. Yeah.
for these events.
Yeah. Just like any big problem, break it down into small pieces, one by
Yep.
I'm curious about the sleep deprivation and how you guys manage that. Did you budget sleep times throughout the course, and kind of what were those budgets if you had them?
Well, so we didn't talk about sleep, and that was one of our mistakes. And so so the three of us, other than Mike, that the rest of us had never done a long expedition race, so we didn't know really how to plan for that. And I think Mike is just such a natural at it that we just didn't think to talk about it. And on top of that, I don't know if y'all know this, but we had 5 sleep cards that we had to use. Do you know about that
No.
part of it?
No.
Okay. So ECO decided that every team had to take use 5 sleep cards of 3 hours each. And they can only be used at like certain checkpoints. So when they threw that into the mix, Mike was like, well, that could be good or bad. And for us, it was bad. Because basically the rules surrounding them were, you couldn't use more than 2 at one time. And so it was like, okay, and we didn't, like I said, we didn't really discuss it. And then all of a sudden we're like in the race and we're making gut decisions at times. And so I was concerned about the sleep deprivation, but I knew I could go like 48 hours and I would be okay with that. But then I'd probably need to like, now's time to sleep, And in some ways you can kind of lose track of time a bit. Like I was pretty good at, I'm a being a numbers person, I was kind of keeping track in my head, and I'm like, okay, it's been like so many hours. And so yeah, we kind of messed that up. Like when we hit the ropes section, we were on like almost almost 60 hours without sleep. So
Wow.
that was not good. And it was, I was having some weird stuff going on in my head.
Yeah.
Like lucid dreaming is I wasn't hallucinating, but I looked it up, and I think it was what they call lucid dreaming. And I was just like, oh man, I cannot.
Yeah.
Like I'm alert, but I can't keep the order straight of everything that I'm trying to do right now. So that was tough. It was pitch black. It was pouring down rain, and we were ascending 3,000 feet, and that was pretty brutal. So.
Yeah, that was a really exciting part of the show. I really enjoyed that part. Just trying to put myself in your shoes doing that. It was really hard.
Well, like, and even on the row when we did like an overnight thing, I just tend to fall asleep, and on the oars or wherever, I just fall asleep. So I can imagine myself on the bike just falling asleep, falling over.
It happens. It definitely happens. Like we were on the paddle boards the first night, and I was tethered to Mike's board, so we could stay together, and I just like fell asleep standing up. I fell asleep to hit the board, and Mike was like, "What happened?" I was like, "Oh, I just fell down for a second." But I like hit the deck, and I was like, "Oh, okay, wake up."
Wow.
Pretty funny.
And I know nutrition throughout this whole thing while you're moving constantly is a really, really powerful tool to make sure you can keep going. So what is your nutrition plan, and how do you manage that?
Well, a lot of it came from experience, and of doing like these kind of races. And so we gosh, to be honest, we eat a lot of kind of like junk food. Like we go to the store, we'll buy like potato chips, like Snicker bars, like just anything that you want to throw into your mouth. Like salty stuff is really good. So that's why we buy potato chips. But so when we're packing for like a stage, when we're basically we had the checkpoints where we stop and we pack our bags. And I mean, we just have like kind of pre-made sandwiches, like peanut butter and jelly. Josiah brought like a bunch of drink mix kind of stuff that was super high calorie, kind of recovery type of stuff. And that was really good. In hindsight, like we did not bring enough food, mainly because we were thinking we wouldn't be out there as long as we were for each stage. So I was so hungry for a lot of the race. But yeah, the recovery stuff was really good. And then I think those MREs are also good, and I've never taken those in a race before, but I definitely will next time. So you like heat up the water and pour it in, and scrunch it up, and you've got like an actual meal, like oatmeal or whatever it is in those packages. So I think those are good to bring, because it's just like real food, because you're not going to survive on bars and jails. Like that just gets kind of nasty.
Right.
So is it better kind of just to eat and snack along the whole way as you're going, or actually take a break and physically eat something?
I'm kind of a grazer. I'll just, we're kind of like just shoving food in our mouth like constantly. Like we have on the out there packs, there's a lot of pockets, a lot of in the front of your in the front of the pack, so you can like easily access like your food, and you don't have to take your pack off. So I'm constantly just shoving food in my mouth.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that that, and like just having your electrolytes, like having like we had water drops, like Xenix these water drops from, I think, Sweden. And so we never carried a lot of water, which was nice, because that's a lot of weight.
So what is it? It's like a water purifying?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah, it's it's this little like it's kind of like like the old iodine drops, but they work really quickly. Like you just put a couple drops in your bottle, and then you didn't have to shake it. You wait like a minute and you can drink the water.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that was really nice. And you have to know that there's water sources for sure, but
so there's pretty much water everywhere that you can just like refill and then put this in, and then you're good to go.
I mean, for the most part, and I feel like they were pretty good about telling us that if there was a section where there wasn't water, like like wasn't accessible water on the course, then I think they might have told us that before, and I can't quite remember. But in Fiji, there was plenty of places to get water, so we were okay there.
Well, Gretchen, this has been really valuable information for us. We really appreciate it. I think we've held you captive long enough.
Yeah.
Before we let you go, though, was wondering if you could tell us of any books that have been impactful for you that you might want to share.
Oh, okay. Well, one of them that I think kind of crossed my mind actually when I saw that question is Travis Macy wrote a book called The Ultra Mindset.
Ooh.
And it's kind of just like a good read, is telling some stories about adventure racing, but also just some good advice. And so that one is, I would recommend picking that one up just to get a more inside look into adventure racing if that's what you're interested in. And another book that I read fairly recently, like I read it before before Kurt and those guys did the speed run on the Grand Canyon, is the Emerald Mile. And that's about the dory that held the speed record on Grand Canyon for many years.
Awesome. That's great.
You might have heard of that. It's Kevin Fedarko is the author, and yeah, it's a lot of, it's a lot about the history of Grand Canyon, and also just the adventure down the river. It is just, it was just gripping for me, having done Grand Canyon a couple times. So anyway, those are two good ones.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And it's been an awesome talk to you. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.